A sand ship commanded by the Admiral is currently going toward a mysterious tower in the midst of the desert that is constantly encircled by dark clouds and lightning. However, their journey is abruptly cut short as they come under attack by Diablos, a monster that inhabits the dunes. The monster attempts to topple the ship by exerting pressure on it with its massive frame, prompting the Admiral to quickly grab the wheel and attempt to maneuver the vessel away from its path. The escape is accomplished, but tragically, the hunter falls and is abandoned in the desert while attempting to save Handler from plunging off the ship. On Earth, a group of troops who went missing in the desert are being looked for by Captain Natalie Artemis and her security squad, which consists of Lincoln, Marshall, Steeler, and Axe. A recording of their SOS message and wheel tracks on the road that abruptly halt, as if the car that left them had vanished into thin air, are the only hints they have. A few enigmatic rock markings with unintelligible symbols are situated close to the route. A dark storm that is traveling erratically suddenly materializes in front of them. The group boards their cars in an attempt to flee as the storm hits all of the enigmatic markings with lightning, causing the text to glow. Regardless of the team's speed, the storm always outpaces them and soon reaches their automobiles, swallowing them inside a portal as the cars go off a cannon's edge. The wind is pushing the cars, causing them to roll, spin, and topple over, knocking the occupants out of their seats. The troops see the storm has backed off and is floating above a mountainous area with numerous structures that aren't on their maps. When they eventually land and come out, they discover that there are a lot of sand dunes in this desert, which is strange, considering the closest dunes should be 20 clicks away. They make the decision to attempt utilizing the sun as a navigational aid to return to base, because all of their gadgets have been destroyed and not even their compass is functional. But Axe notices something and he tells them to wait. It's the automobiles the Lost Squad was driving. Beside them are bodies that have been charred so badly that a flamethrower could not have achieved the damage. There are further items nearby, glass fragments which suggest that something extremely hot melted the sand, and empty rounds, indicating that the fallen warriors protected themselves against an enemy. Whatever it was, though, it didn't leave any trace in the sand. Concerned about the source of this, the group returns to their vehicles and drives away, not realizing that Hunter is following them with his spyglass. They come to a stop once more, though, upon discovering one more astounding discovery: a massive animal skeleton that dwarfs that of a dinosaur. Hunter uses their stop as an opportunity to shoot an arrow at them. The soldiers retaliate by firing back, but Artemis snatches the arrow and motions for them to stop because it just has a warning symbol chalk on it. Diablo suddenly emerges from the sand and starts pursuing the team as they attempt to flee in their automobiles. It is unaffected by everything they shoot at it, but ultimately it gets near enough to strike a car and topple it over many times, killing Axe. Steeler escapes before the automobile is crushed and hops onto another jeep with some others, but they are not able to get very far before Diablos flips this vehicle over as well and impales Steeler with his tusk. He throws a few grenades at the monster just before he dies, missing him, but creating a space for his crew to shelter behind the rocky formations. The team enters a cave whose entrance is too small for the monster to follow, so it gives up for the time being and moves on as Hunter fires a smoke arrow at Diablos to slow it down. As a commander, Artemis gives them commands and reassures them that they would be good warriors and survive as such, assuaging Dash's fears over their predicament. But before she can finish speaking, a spider-like creature known as Nursilla grabs hold of her and injects her with venom that paralyzes her. It then drops the woman and flees as soldiers fire at it. Dash encourages Marshall and Lincoln to move quickly since more Nursillas are emerging, now that darkness has fallen, while they attempt ineffective CPR on Artemis. Presuming that Artemis has perished, Lincoln, Marshall, and Dash depart the cave while Hunter, who is firing explosive arrows from a cliff and has to flee as an Ursula is pursuing him, assists them in continuing to fire at the monster. Due to Dash's stumble and fall, her group's departure is delayed, which allows one of the monsters to ambush from above and take Marshall prisoner. Artemis wakes up feeling a little lightheaded while Hunter hides in his underground cave hideout. She can hear the cries of her friends coming from outside, but before long, another Nursilla knocks her out. Fortunately, Artemis's cocoon in the Nursilla's nest is thin enough for her to break off with her bare hands when she awakens the next morning. After breaking free, she discovers that other cocoons containing Dash and Marshall's remains are around her. Artemis, battling agony and lightheadedness, picks up her fallen teammate's pouch and takes out 2 flares, an oxygen can, and several bullets. She uses one of the flares for illumination and defense as she moves through a spiderweb hallway as Lincoln, who is experiencing chest discomfort, hurt and is unable to feel his arm, starts to jump out at her. When Artemis's flare goes off, she assists Lincoln in moving in the direction of an exit without realizing the monsters are pursuing them. Artemis uses her new flare to ward off an Ursula that arrives in front of them while she is turning on the other one. However, things become more difficult when Lincoln experiences more physical discomfort and tears from his shirt, only to discover that his wound is home to hatching eggs. When the Ursula tries to take Artemis away from him, she sets it on fire by igniting the flare, and the oxygen can together, causing the entire nest to catch fire. As Artemis begins to ascend in the direction of the escape, an Ursula grabs her leg and pulls her back in. She manages to break free by tossing the bullets she managed to salvage into the fire, causing them to explode. It's morning when she eventually emerges from the cave, and the light stops the Ursulas from pursuing her. She breaks open a bullet she finds on the ground, puts gunpowder on the wound on her ankle, and then freaks out because she feels like something is crawling on her body. She then bangs 2 rocks together to produce a spark, light the powder, and cauterizes the wound. She breaks open a bullet she finds on the ground, puts gunpowder on the wound on her ankle, and then freaks out because she feels like something is crawling on her body. She then bangs 2 rocks together to produce a spark, light the powder, and cauterizes the wound. She then climbs the hill to have a better perspective of the surroundings, but all she can see is desert with the storm that brought her here looming far in the distance. That might hold the secret to getting back home. But not until she puts something to the test. She launches a rock into the sand, causing Diablos to erupt in a rage and bolt as soon as he loses sight of her. Hunter follows Artemis as she explores the rocky terrain further. She comes across a shipwreck, which briefly gives her hope that she may discover water, but the keg is empty of anything but sand. Hunter jumps on her and grabs her from behind as she penetrates the wreckage of the spacecraft, but she swiftly recovers and engages in a hand-to-hand combat. Although Artemis stabs Hunter in the shoulder with his own dagger, he still manages to overcome her and win the fight, despite the fact that they are both extremely skilled fighters who keep each other on their toes. He ties up Artemis's hands and leads her to his cave lair, where he tries to get her to travel more quickly before dusk arrives and the spiders reappear. Without his realizing, Artemis drops to the ground, picks up a shard of glass, and is then lifted up once more and carried out. At the cave, Hunter eats moss from the rocks and drinks some water from a homemade device, but he doesn't share anything with Artemis. When she tries to speak, he tells her to shut up because the Ursulas are outside the cave, trying to dig a way in. Hunter then applies a special ointment to his chest wound from the stabbing and offers prayers to 2 small figurines he has with him. He has no idea that Artemis is actually using the glass shard to cut the cords around her wrists, while she is merely acting like she is asleep. When Hunter returns from his morning patrol to check on the storm and the creatures, he finds Artemis where he left her and falls victim to her ambush. She tries to sip from his water after striking him and tying him up, but he turns off the device, preventing her from doing so. Since their languages prevent them from communicating, Artemis replies by demolishing his tiny altar, which infuriates him. They start fighting again once Hunter jumps on her, and all of their rolling and scuttling gets them out of the cave. Hunter tumbles into a hole that leads to the Ursula's nest because they are unable to stop rolling. But Artemis finds him in time to pull him back up and cut the cords that bind him off. She offers him some chocolate as a peace offering in an attempt to prove that she is not his enemy. He accepts and enjoys the flavor. He gives her his water skin back in exchange, and she takes a sip before trailing him to the edge of the hill. There, they are able to converse briefly about their shared desire to return to the storm, but Diablos is getting in the way. Hunter disagrees, saying that weapons are ineffective against monsters, and Artemis believes they should return to her military vehicles and get their weapons. Rather, he leads her to the entrance of the Ursula's nest to share his theory, which is that they can utilize the poison of a dead spider to slay Diablos. Reluctantly agreeing to be bait, Artemis refers to it as using a monster to kill another monster. She moves to stand in the center of the rocky area as the sun sets and performs an army song to get the attention of an Ursula. The strategy is successful, and Artemis flees toward the location of the trap they had prepared when a spider appears. Hunter seizes the opportunity to leap from above, sever the Ursula's head in half, and impale it as it stands on a rope. Before other Ursulas follow them, they also chop off its stinger and return it to the lair. Following a brief but amusing exchange, Hunter tells her that the figurines in the cave are a representation of his deceased family. They begin preparing their plan the following day. They construct a trap near the shipwreck. The Ursula's stinger is wrapped around an arrow, and Artemis is given armor and weapons to practice with. One resembles a grappling hook, while the other is a pair of double blades that, when pressed together, can catch fire. When it comes time to carry out the plan, everything proceeds smoothly at first. When they unleash a homemade catapult, a keg is launched into the air and lands in the center of a dune, forcing Diablos to retreat safely away from them. Diablos follows Artemis and Hunter as they sprint toward her army trucks, but they are forced to stop as the monster hides in the sand. While Artemis goes to get her weapons, Hunter chooses to play the bait, but in the process of running, he unintentionally loses the pouch containing his family figures. Diablos takes the opportunity to come out and knock him off when he returns to pick him up. Without waiting, Hunter fires a poisoned arrow straight into its eye, infuriating Diablos and causing it to accelerate in pursuit. Artemis attempts to divert attention by firing the car's machine gun. As the poison starts to wear off, Diablos approaches and topples the automobile after Artemis hides inside, because there are still too few bullets to deal it any harm. When she emerges, the creature follows her. So Hunter uses the opportunity to leap on its head and impale his blade in the center of it. Unfortunately, it doesn't go far enough, and as a result, Diablos throws him off balance and launches him into the other car. But there is still time to finish it, so Artemis launches her hook toward Diablo's head, causing it to move and lifting her along the way as she lands on top of it. She brings Diablos to a final end by pushing the sword and completing what Hunter began. Diablos approaches and topples the automobile after Artemis hides inside, because there are still too few bullets to deal it any harm. When she emerges, the creature follows her. So Hunter uses the opportunity to leap on its head and impale his blade in the center of it. Unfortunately, it doesn't go far enough, and as a result, Diablos throws him off balance and launches him into the other car. But there is still time to finish it, so Artemis launches her hook toward Diablo's head, causing it to move and lifting her along the way as she lands on top of it. She brings Diablos to a final end by pushing the sword and completing what Hunter began. As long as Hunter is unconscious, Artemis gathers whatever she can from the automobile, chops off a portion of the monster's tough skin, and uses it as an improvised stretcher to pull Hunter across the desert. After several hours, the wind picks up and threatens them, so Artemis surrounds them with a tent and keeps his heart from stopping by using the emergency army kit. They are finally buried in sand after the sandstorm passes, but because of the tent, they are able to live and climb out of the ensuing dune with ease. Artemis and Hunter decide to pause for a rest when they reach an oasis, following yet another strenuous walk. Hunter says that the apsaros, which resemble tortoises and are found in the area, are herbivores, so people shouldn't be afraid of them. Another monster named Cephalos emerges from the lake to attack Artemis as she approaches it to drink, but Hunter kills it with a quick sword swing and roasts it over a fire afterwards. Once supper is finished and night comes, the couple is surprised to see the oasis on fire. Greater than any monster they have previously encountered, another one is attacking. The fire-breathing wyvern Rathalos. While Hunter sneaks away from Rathalos, a group of terrified apes attempt to flee in a stampede, and Artemis collapses in the midst of them. She fears that she would be crushed, but then she sees the Admiral suddenly there, waving a sword that is on fire to ward off the apsaros. Hunter reaches the edge of a cliff, and Artemis rises to follow his lead, turning on the fire on her dual blades. If Handler hadn't appeared dangling from a rope to pick him up and carry him away from the edge, he would have also been ran over. Artemis praises the Admiral for his assistance once the apsaros have all left, and he surprises her by speaking in English just before punching her unconscious. A few moments later, she awakens in a ship's cage under the watchful eye of the Admiral's crew. Hunter sends them on their way. He clearly feels bad about her incarceration, but he is powerless to stop it. When he leaves, Artemis discovers that her cage has a hatch, so she uses the bench to pry open the door, break the lock, and enter the kitchen covertly. She is astonished when the official chef and cat-like friend of the Admiral, the Palico, forbids her from taking anything when she tries to steal a knife. Hunter then shows up with some excellent news. Artemis is finally free. He brings her to meet the Admiral, who takes off her shackles and apologizes for the mistake before telling her why he did it in the first place. The Admiral fears what could happen to this world if her world were to take over. Artemis is not the first person to cross over. In fact, he learned her language from earlier guests. Everything that has happened is because of the Sky Tower, which is located at the top of the storm-encircled mountain. It's a dangerous and rather advanced relic from an old civilization. These prehistoric people were able to travel between worlds, but they are now extinct because technology failed them, and the Admiral believes Earth may have played a role. The Admiral suggests that if Artemis aids them in defeating Rathalos, they will assist her in returning home. So of course Artemis accepts. They are headed to inspect the tower, but Rathalos is a hazardous hurdle. At first light, the crew sets out for the mountain, and after a protracted and difficult ascent, they reach the tower. They believe that the Sky Tower's ability to control the storm and open a portal to her world, which appears to be unstable, comes from the fact that it is built on lava. They discover glass pieces on the ground as soon as they start to approach the tower, indicating that Rathalos is nearby. The crew divides and prepares for battle when the Admiral tells them that the Wyvern is weak just before it breathes fire. Before landing between the crew and the tower, Rathalos burns a few of them. The Admiral pursues at first, followed closely by Artemis and Hunter, who are all equipped with flame-tipped guns in order to deal any damage. While the tower begins to light up, all the unique marks surrounding it that match the ones Artemis had seen in her world, other crew members attempt to assist as well, but Rathalos pulls them away. Even if they are able to hit the creature a few times, their damage is insufficient to bring it down. Rathalos follows Artemis with fire until she is compelled to leap from the cliff, whereupon she enters a portal and returns to her own realm. She appears to receive assistance from an army rescue group, who say they had been searching for her unit for some time. They take off after placing her on a stretcher and escorting her to their aircraft, but they are unable to get very far before the storm reappears overhead and Rathalos soars into existence. Not deterred by the troops' barrage of shots, the monster blows up the jet and causes it to fall before pursuing the other vehicles. It kills every one of them by breathing fire on them or even consuming them. Having survived the crash, Artemis notices everything and devises a strategy. She dashes towards Rathalos and shoots her hook at its wing, stabbing it with his knife when she is brought closer, after snatching 2 flares from the downplane. The beast is about to spit fire on her for what she did. Infuriated by this, seizing the opportunity, Artemis ignites the flare, scorching her palm in the process, and throws it into Rathalos' gaping mouth, causing internal burns. Unfortunately, the creature will not be killed by this amount of damage. It rises once more, poised to strike Artemis, but Hunter stops it in its tracks by launching a few of his explosive arrows. The flare creates a wound that one of them is able to enter, and this is the last blow required to finally kill the beast. Following that, the Admiral shows up and tells her they had to come, since they couldn't allow the monsters destroy her world. Artemis chooses to travel back to the other world with them in order to demolish the Sky Tower and put an end to this cycle permanently, since the tower has opened another portal and a creature known as Gormagala is perched atop it. The chef Palico enters the battle as she, Hunter, and the Admiral pursue the new monster and force it back into its realm. They are unaware that a mystery guy in a cloak is watching the fight from the top of the tower.